Well, Rav Nachum.
Oh, hello. My computer decided to reboot. Well, it told me I had to reboot. I always listen to my computer. Welcome, everybody. First of all, Rabbi Landis wanted me to tell you that he tried to be here, but his dialysis was rescheduled, and he couldn't control that because of the war. Everybody's like in one underground location, and they had to reschedule him, and it's exactly for the time this year. He said he would try to come somehow, maybe. So he might pop in at one point. But he said to me, that's an excuse for not coming to Shear if you have a dialysis. Other things he's not so sure about. Okay, so I gave you. Let me just. I'm gonna find the sources just a second. My computer just is fresh at this moment. Yeah. Actually, I want to start with the Psachim. Really a short piece. Here, Ori, we're talking about Psachim Ayin Vav. You want to just, and then we're going to go to Avodah Zarah.
Yeah.
So go ahead. Um,
Okay. Amar Rav, Basar Shchuta Shamen, Shetzlao im Basar Nevela Kachush Asur. So Rav says if we have um, uh, kosher meat was shechted properly, that's fatty, that was roasted along with nevela that was not so that was very lean, asur. It's still an asur mix. My time, why? Mefatme mahadade. They're still enriching. The two are enriching each other
right. So,
with something
so I'll explain.
there.
What's going on is he's coming to tell us a kol shekain, really. He's saying even if the shchuta is the one that's shamein, and not if
Mhm.
it goes without saying that if the one that's nevela is fatty, then obviously it's when it roasts together with the kosher one, it puts its smell into it, or it's mefatme. It perfumes the other one. But even if the kosher one is fat, once the perfume of the kosher one gets in the air, then the even the lean treif one will start exuding flavor or smell and go into the kosher one, and therefore they're both forbidden.
Assumedly, it
Okay,
goes from the fat one to the lean one, but then it goes back from the lean one to the fat
exactly.
one.
The fat one sort of creates the sauna experience, and then once everybody's there, they're all exuding. Okay,
Belevi
go.
Amar, keep going.
Yeah, yeah.
Belevi Amar, Afilu Basar Shchuta Kachush Shetzilao im Basar Nevela. Shaman mutar. So even if you revert, according to Levi, who thinks it's mutar, he also gives us in some ways the stronger case. Um, if we have kosher meat that's lean and nevela that's fatty, still mutar. So it's like almost the inverse kol shekain for heter.
Right.
My time. Why? Recha ba'almahu, v'recha lav miltahi. So Levi brings the reasoning that this is just Recha, and Recha is not a material thing
Right. What do you think he
that's going to
means lav
transfer
lav
flavor.
miltahi? It's not a thing. By the way, we have that expression in modern. parlance nowadays. It's a thing, or it's not a thing.
Right.
What do we mean? What does he mean by that? It's not a thing.
Well, in this case, it's not a thing that can transfer flavor, assumedly.
Oh, maybe no, maybe not. Maybe, okay, that's one possibility. It's not a thing that's capable of transferring flavor. What's another possibility?
It's nothing at all.
Well, it can't mean it's nothing at all. I mean, everybody smells things. I mean, it doesn't mean it doesn't exist.
Well, right, but it may not be material. Like a smell, the understanding
He
that a
could
smell
mean
is material
he
is
could be
a
saying
modern
that
idea.
it's not it has no, that it's not have it's not a thing. It's not a physical thing. It's a something. It's something ephemeral, and therefore what?
And
Therefore,
therefore,
we can't
whatever,
forbid it, and therefore we can't forbid it.
yeah. I was gonna
What's
say,
another?
even if it
Any other possibilities?
transfers,
Any other possibilities? Yeah, Noam.
I think Rav and Abaye use this language in other machlokot in Shas, where it means like it's not a halachic phenomenon.
Exactly. That's the third
Um,
possibility, and I think that we'll go with that one. It's not a halachic. It's not a halachic phenomenon. Uh, it has no halachic significance. It may exist. It may even transfer flavor. He may not argue on the mitziut with Rav, but it has no significance, even though there is the flavor even though there's not the flavor, the smell transferring. Okay. And then it says, Avdi Levi Uvda Reish Galuta Begedi V'Davar Acher. So at this Reish Galuta, at the house of the Reish Galuta, they were cooking kosher and non-kosher things, and he did an uvda, which really means he mattered it. He mattered. So in other words, he paskined like himself. And there, right, okay, and that's exactly the case. All right, let's go. Let's skip the Rashi for now. Well, we can actually, yeah, we can read the second Rashi, the Rashi that I gave. It's actually further down the Gemara, but it has significance. See where it says, Amar Lecha Rav, the Kule Alma Recha Milta, a little bit further down on the page. And go ahead, Ori.
I'm looking on the source sheet, by the way.
Okay, you can look on the
Um,
source sheet.
Amar
Yeah.
lecha Rav, dekuli alma recha milta. So Rav actually will say, actually, everyone agrees that reach is something. The time of their Yehuda mishum depat. Do you want to explain the case, or should I just go through
You
it?
can skip it, actually. Skip it. Just go. Va'afal gav. Skip to va'afal gav.
Right. V'afagav dekaimi tanai kavate
Okay, so what does that
derav.
mean?
Even though there's a Tana who agrees with Rav,
Or even two Tanas. That there's two
right?
Tanas that argue, but they both agree with Rav, which would
Right.
seem to
Hilchata kavate de
indicate
Levi.
right, which would seem if the Tanaim are if they're agreeing with them and Rav and for, presumably Levi can't really explain the Tanaim, then we should go like Rav. But he said, nevertheless, Hilchata Kavte, the Levi. Why?
Daha ifligu ba abai verava gabe bat tiha.
Right. This is why I was
Uh,
thinking. This is why I was debating whether
it's
to
the
do this
next one.
after the next Gemara, because they argue. Abaye and Rabbah argue about Recha in Avodah Zarah. Okay, and V'kamle Rava
Rava b'shita te de Levi. Rava holds by like Levi shita there. V'amarecha la
Amarecha Lav Milta.
miltahi. Ba'abai v'Rava hilchata kerava. And so really it's going with Rava here
In other words, the
uh,
general. No, we have a
versus
rule. We have a
Levi.
rule that Abaye and Rava, the halacha is like Rava, and therefore the halacha should be like Rava, which means like Levi. So even though we have Tanaim that seem to agree with Rava, we're going to go with Levi. Halakha kabasraisa. The
You
later
mean Rav?
opinions are
Yeah.
more authoritative. Hopefully not more authoritarian, but more authoritative. And so we go like Rav. That's his logic. And then go on.
Hilchata kerava. V'chein hu b'tshuvat ha'geonim. V'af mishmo של רבי אליעזר בן יצחק נאמר לי דלא חייש לה.
right? We don't even think we don't worry about it. We're not concerned with it. The halacha is like Levi. Okay, that's Rashi. Let's skip now to Avodah Zarah and maybe Max, you want to read? Oh, actually, I want to read a little bit more of Avodah Zarah than I have on the sheet. So if you have a Gemara or something similar, bring a Gemara. You want to do a little bit more. Avodah Zarah Samach Vav. Right. This is just the other case. We have got to get that other case that Rashi mentioned. We got to get this other case.
Okay. Where should I start?
Start from where I started in the sheet.
Bastia. Okay.
Hi, Bas Tiha. Yeah.
Okay. Hi, Bastia. Goy. I don't know. Just Goy b'di Israel. Right. Goy b'di Israel shaper dami. Yisrael b'di Goy. Abaye amar asur. Rava amar mutar.
So first of all, okay. So what is this Bas Tiha?
It's like a hole in the top of a barrel to smell to see how the wine is doing.
Exactly. It's a hole in like they had like in like the lid. There's a kind of like a lid made out of clay or something that they put a hole in it. And so so you want to smell from it. So what's the case?
So if a Gentile smells kosher wine, that's fine.
Because you might think the Gentile smelling it is like him tasting it, and a touch of a goy would ruin the wine. But the smelling is fine.
Right.
Tapir dami,
Right,
right?
that's fine. But a Jew smelling Gentile wine, Abaye says aser, Rava says mutter. Abaye amar aser recha milsahi, v'Rava amar muta recha lav milsahi, and it just falls. The positions here just fall on recha.
Right. And you see these are the two Amoraim who are arguing within Levi. In other words, if you
Right.
would, I mean, unless you want to, I mean, you could say one is holding. Well, that's why the Dibra Matchil of the Rashi was. He was saying, uh, whatever, whatever. The point is, these ones maybe are both within Levi. One is saying normally Recha is not a milta, but here it is. Says Abaye. Whatever, you could learn it in different ways. But let's go on.
Okay. Amar Rava mina amina la derecha velo klumhi. Ditznan tanor shehisiko bechamun shel truma ve'afabo es hapas muteres lefi she'ein tam kamun ela recha kamun. So Rava brings proof for recha lav milta from this Mishnah in Orla, I think it was.
Truma, I think.
The other one was in Orla. This isn't right. An oven that was fueled by truma cumin, meaning I think on the logs.
Right. Now,
And
cumin has a strong smell.
right.
Right. And it was truma cumin, and therefore it's forbidden.
Right.
And then you cook bread in the oven, so the bread is going to have a smell of cumin. And we say it's muter. Because it's not the flavor of cumin, but just the smell of cumin. And therefore you see that smell is nothing.
Yeah.
Even though there's smell there. In other words, we're not talking about that recha is not there and therefore it's mutter. We're saying recha is there and nevertheless it's mutter.
Yeah.
Okay, and what does Abaye say?
Okay. Abaye shani hasam de mikla isure. So Abaye says that that's different because the isur is all burned up. So it's not giving anything. But I guess if it would, then it would be us.
Yeah, it's a strange logic here, what he's saying. We saw this in Shabbos, we see this idea of mikle, which means like at the moment you have hana'ah from it, it's not there anymore. Here, like you're having, even though you're smelling the cumin, but the cumin is gone. So it's almost like he's saying smell would be a thing if the source of the smell is still around. But when the source is gone, this is just like a residual smell, not a real smell. So already getting into kind of like not all smells are created equal, because this is a smell, but it's just not, the thing is gone, so it's like a residual smell. Um,
or Rav Nachum, or there's like Tam and there's Recha, and Tam is what's significant, and Recha is not halachically, right? We care about Tam, right? Tam Gikar, and
right.
Recha Gikar maybe, or something like that. And so Recha, whatever
No, but
Recha is,
I'm trying to explain why mikle. But I'll give you another explanation why mikle, why it matters that it disappeared. We could say like this because at the moment that the Isser, maybe it is related to the Shabbos thing, because
yeah.
the moment that you have hana'ah from the cumin is not there anymore, and the prohibition is to have hana'ah from cumin, but you're not having hana'ah from cumin. The smell was created by the cumin after the cumin disappeared. So you're not having hana'ah from the cumin. You're having hana'ah from the ghost, from the cumin. At the moment you got the hana'ah from it, it disappeared. So it's not
Oh,
called hana'ah. So
yeah,
even though there's a smell there, it's more permitted smell because the whole reason that cumin was usher was because you can't have hana'ah from the cumin, but you're not having hana'ah from the cumin. The cumin's gone.
you're having Hana from ashes essentially. That
Yeah, you're having
smell.
hana'ah from ashes, and the ashes are not
Not
forbidden.
true. Yeah.
Okay, so that's his explanation. So he seems to hold that Recha is a milta then. It's just that in this case it's not. And that was who remind me who that was? That was Abai.
That's about it.
Go ahead.
Okay. Amar of Mari Kitznai Harodeh Pas Chama V'Natna Al Pi Chavis Shel Yain Shel Truma Rabbi Meir Oser Rabbi Yehuda Matir. So this was in the Psachim Sugi also. If you remove hot bread directly from the
Oh,
oven,
wait. What does it mean, lema? What does it mean, lema katanai or katanai?
that Rav Mari thinks that this the machlokas between Abaye and Rava is actually they're just channeling machlokas from earlier from the
Right. Okay. Good.
So if you take that hot bread and put it on top of a barrel of truma wine, Rabbi Meir is oser the bread and Rabbi Yehuda is matir the bread. Rabbi Yossi matir b'shel chitin ve'oser b'shel seorim mipnei seorim sho'avos. And Rabbi Yossi thinks that it depends on the type of bread, that he would be matir wheat bread, but not barley.
Right, because barley absorbs better, it's softer. Let's say. Okay, and now explain. Now go on.
Okay. My lav behakami palgi demar savar recha milsi hi v'mar savar recha velo klumhi.
Right, and that's
So
why.
this seems to map directly onto
Right.
what we saw before with Rav and Abaye.
Okay, go ahead.
L'Rava vadai t'naihi, l'Abaye milema t'naihi. So according to Rava, certainly it does map back onto what was up to the Rava Abaye piece. But unclear if Abaye would think that. Amar l'cha Abaye, lav mi ismar Allah. Amar Rabba Bar Chana, Amar Rish Lakis, bepas chama v'chavis pesucha, divrei kol asura. Bepas tzonenes v'chavis megufa, divrei kol muteres. Lo nechlaku, ela befas chama v'chavis megufa, befas tzonenes v'chavis pesucha, v'hadidinami kepas chama v'chavis pesucha dami. So Abaye would basically say that it's more complicated than just mapping cleanly onto Rabbi Meir and Rabbi Yehuda, because there were some limitations put on that machlokas between them by Reish Lakish, which is that it depends on the heat of the bread and the whether or not the barrel is open. That if the bread is hot and the chavis is open, then
In other
definitely
words, they all say that Recha is milta.
right.
They all say that Recha is milta, but they say that sometimes there's no real Recha because it's cold or because it's covered.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah. Should I keep translating, or is that
Um,
good?
that's enough. Okay. And then he goes on and he says about then I think Abaye says, I think it's Abaye says that the reason why, right, he says Nami kipat chama v'chavit petucha dami. In other words, the case of the bait of the batiha that is actually a case is like the case of the thing being open and the bread being warm, and therefore he forbids it. Okay, fine. That's the basic sugya. So what do we see in these sugyas? We see that is there a well, I guess we just see that. What do we see? What do we see? Do we see that is it consistent? Is there some consistency, or is there a contradiction?
Contradiction with what?
Between the two sugyas in Psachim and in Avodah Zarah.
Well, it depends on how much you both hold by the rules of how we normatively paskin and also how you interpret the entire concept of Reicha Milta here.
That sounds like a title of a long discussion.
I mean, I think it's basically, as in that's me referencing the Tosfot, right? That like, I think, I would say at first glance, the pshat does appear that there are is a position that says we just don't think smell is significant, no matter what. Like, we just don't think it has halachic significance. And a position that says we do think smell has halachic significance, and maybe it depends on how concentrated the smell is, right? That maybe smell sometimes has halachic significance.
Right. Okay. I like that. I like that. Let's stop there for a second. Yeah, I like that. In other words, what we're saying is there's one opinion that says smell has no significance, and the stricter opinion is saying that it depends that not all smells are created equal. Put it that way. And there's some smells that do have significance and some smells that don't. Just wait a second.
Also, some concentrations of smell.
Well, right. Smells. I don't mean smells. Some sources of smell. Right. Some
Situations of
circumstances.
smell.
Yeah. Situations. Some intensities of smell. So let's look at the Tosfot in Psachim that I gave you. That's the short one. Here, Isaac, you want to read that?
Yeah, just a sec. I have to pull it up. Short one is for Pesachim, yeah?
Yeah.
Okay. Asalava me porzikaya.
So wait, what? Yeah, what? This is this Rabba me
Porzikaya or something? I don't.
Perizkaya. Yeah, I don't know where that is. What did he say?
Let's see. He said that you cannot um
Yeah, I didn't bring you the
he's
Gemara there. He said you can't. He forbid. He forbid.
yeah, you can't eat the two meats
the
cooked
meat or
that
yeah.
roasted in the same oven. Okay. Mikan posek Rabbeinu Tam kerav v'rava nami
No,
d'shalei b'va.
stop.
Yeah.
Mikan posek Rabbeinu Tam karav.
Okay.
From this
Rabbeinu
statement,
Tam
Rabbeinu Tam
Paskin.
decided that the halacha is like Rav because if Rav forbid it, right? Was
Right,
it
because
Rav that
Rav forbade and Levi
not
permitted.
Levi and not Levi
Yeah.
he permitted.
Yeah.
So unlike Rashi, who said it's like Levi, he says like Rav, because here you see this person forbid.
All
Go
right.
ahead.
Rava nami d'share b'vatiha.
Well, that's
Matzisava.
the Gemara that we saw that Rava
Right, that
permitted that
Rava says that you
case.
can smell this batiha with the wine. That's
So what's
Nesach.
so explain that. Matzi Savar.
Matzisavar kavate v'sham mefarash uvetanurim gedolim shelanu נראה דמותר לאפות לחם עם אותו
Wait, 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 wait,
פשטידה.
wait.
Oh, sorry.
Matzi savar kavte. That's the end of the idea.
Yeah. So
Matzi
he,
savar kavte ken. Vish
so
Visham
he,
mifurash. Maybe you can add that. Usham mifurash. In other words, what he's saying is that the Gemara over there says that Rava can fit to Rav. So don't tell me that Rava is paskening like Levi. Rava could fit to Rav in that Gemara. Okay, now
okay.
he goes on. Ubetanarim.
בתנועים גדולים שלנו נראה דמותר לאפות לחם עם אותו פשטידה, הואיל ומכוסות היטב, הווה כאין שתי קדרות, ואפילו פלדונש, שיש להרחיק, אין נראה לרבי, שיהא אסור שיש אוויר מרובה בתנור, וההבל מתפשט. Okay. So in our very large ovens, it seems that it's permissible to bake bread with this pashtita, which is kind of like a, how do you say, not a
Chicken pot
shepherd's
pie.
pie, but like like
Chicken
a
pot
regular
pie.
pie. Yeah,
It's like
pot
chicken
pie.
pot pie, but
Yeah, it has a dough covering,
has a dough covering.
which
And
is
also, I think the whole thing we're going to see later when we talk about the merida, I think it's called that it's actually the bottom is also dough. It's really just all dough. There's no tin. They sort of make like it's like somebody
it's
empanada.
like beef Wellington.
It's an empanada, but a big empanada. I think
It's a beef Wellington.
it's a beef Wellington, except Wellington hadn't beaten Napoleon yet.
Well, luckily, the beef Wellington doesn't have to beat anybody on account of being dinner.
But anyway,
Okay,
the point is it's
so
fully surrounded by dough, and what does that gain for us?
right, so but it's well covered, right? It's not like it doesn't. We'll get later to the question of whether or not there are any poked holes in this. Okay, so that's like you're cooking it in the oven in two different pots, which we'll later find out is not a problem. And even this paldonash,
I'm not sure what a paldonash is, but I assume it's something similar.
yeah, I'm
Some
trying
kind
to
of
remember.
similar
Did I
thing.
have it? I'm looking to see if um no, I didn't have a
Not
definition for
important.
it.
Not important.
I didn't
But it's
find
something.
anything.
I think it's something
Okay.
like this pie.
Yeah. So, but this says that paldonash, you have to keep away from it. So something is definitely
Yeah,
different.
maybe it's a little bit worse.
Um,
Yeah.
yeah, it doesn't seem to Rabbi that it would be a sur. I assume there they mean Rabbeinu Tam.
I think what maybe yeah maybe I don't know, maybe the paldonash has more likelihood of some oil dripping from it, and therefore you have to keep it further away.
Okay.
And even so, he's saying it's not going to usher the bread or the that's cooked with it,
Right, because
or
there's a lot of airspace, and then the steam will just kind of
right. So already you
dissipate.
see here, right? So already you see here that like if you cover it, then there's maybe not so much smell or no smell at all. And also he talks about the big oven. Maybe that allows the smell to dissipate. So you see that Tosus is already getting into a kind of world of the levels. There's not just it's not like smell is always forbidden. He poskins that it's forbidden, right? Like Rav. But he permits it if it's covered and if there's air in the oven.
I mean, the thing that I find strange about this is that probably this pashtita, the dough is probably made with lard. So, I mean, so that's going
Maybe
to
there's no
evaporate.
smell from lard.
There's no smell from is there no smell from
Actually,
lard?
well, I remember that they used to put lard in all kinds of baked goods because it's kind of neutral. It's a neutral fat.
Okay, as a neutral cell. Okay, yeah,
Okay,
fair
I
enough.
want to go now to the Tosfot, but the long Tosfot, but because it's long, we're not going to read it all. And I'm actually just going to skip to perhaps the less Gemara part and the more halachic part. And that's where this is this long Tosfos on in Avodah Zarah. it starts Rava Amar Muta Recha Lav Miltahi, but I want to skip a bunch, and I want to go to a place that says Hashta Have Tuva Gavne de Recha. On my sheet, it's about a third of the way in. Tell me if you found it. Hashta Have Tuva Gavne de Recha. You got it, Ruvain? Great. I thought this was the interesting part, or at least today I thought it was interesting. I mean, this year I thought it was the interesting part. Sometimes it's more. You found it, Ari? You found it, Noam? Got it? Okay. Um, so no, so or maybe I'll read this a little bit. I'll read this a little bit here. Vahashta have tuva gavne derecha. So here we go. Here he says exactly what I was trying to say. There are many types of recha. Recha is not like a simple binary thing. Is it a thing or is it not a thing? Is it not? Is it significant halachically or not? But there's many kinds of recha, and here he goes going to list them. I mean, this is after his whole diyun of how he proves all this, but I'm going to skip that. Reach hachazak shebekulan patchama v'chavit petucha dasu lekule alma. So the hardest, the strongest kind of smell is when you have, or the strongest permeation of smell is when you have warm bread and an open barrel of wine, and you put it on the open barrel of wine, and the smell of the wine goes in, and the bread is all hot, and it's going to absorb. And that everybody forbids. And that's the Gemara that we saw in Avodah Zarah. Yeah. Second. All right. Screen a little better. Okay. V'reach basar plugta de Rav Levi. So the smell of meat or fatty meat is the argument of Rav Levi. V'kaimelan to Rav, and we hold like Rav that it's also forbidden. So that's the next strongest because there's a machloket there, but we're holding like Rav. He holds we restrict like Rav. V'reach de batiha kaimelan kerava, but we're going to be lenient by the batiha like Rava. Right? Was Rava lenient? Or am I getting that backwards? Yeah, Rava was lenient.
Rava's lenient, but I have a question. In the case of Batiha, are Rav and Abaye essentially just talking about whether or not the Jew is allowed to smell? Because that feels different from the question about whether the smell is osering some other food object, unless I'm misunderstanding.
You're right. It's not an obvious, I think you're right. It's not an obvious equivalence. But if you go with your definition of Recha Milta being, is it have halachic significance, then it might mean halachic significance in any context. So if it has no halachic significance, then it is comparable. In other words, we're not saying, when we say Recha has no halachic significance, we're actually saying that it's there. When you have this fatty bread, I mean, this is when you have this fatty meat, I should say, and this other meat, now there's smell of the meat, of the non-kosher meat in the meat. Well, it says permitted, it says Levi. Why? Because even though there's smell there, he's not disputing the reality. The reality is that the reality is that there is an actual smell there, but smell has no halachic significance. In other words, we have this concept called tam ke'ikr. What does tam ke'ikr mean? It means that even though I don't have the actual pork here, but I have the flavor of the pork, then my food is forbidden. And we think, well, flavor is because there's particles there. I'm not sure that's how they thought about it, but there's flavor of the thing there. And now the question is what if there's the smell of the thing there? Does that count also as ikr? Is reach ikr? And you could say, well, reach is also particles. we would say nowadays that reach is also molecules. So if you have this, but of course the molecule is very small quantitatively, but it has a smell. So qualitatively, it may be forbidden. If reach is ikr, then it's usher. So Levi comes and says, no, reach is there, but reach is permitted. There's no prohibition on reach. So too by the case of the smelling of the wine, reach is permitted, even though it's there. You're allowed to walk past the pork, ovens, whatever, the bakery, I don't know what you call it, the rotisserie, and enjoy the smell of the cooking pork. There's no prohibition on that. Well, that's probably true according to everybody.
Yeah,
that's kind of your point.
Chamet's cooking on Pesach, right? You walk by the bakery on Pesach, right?
Yeah, can you walk by the Pesach? Yeah, there is Iser Hana'ah. So, right. No, nobody says Iser Hana'ah by pork, but well, let's say milk and meat cooking together, or chametz,
or yain nesech.
So yain nesech, if you hold reich, it's not a milta, then it's not a milta. So you can smell it. It's not a thing, even though it's forbidden by. So I think there is a comparison. That's what Levi says, and as Levi is saying, reich is not a thing, so therefore it's always permitted. But Tosos is saying no. Reach is a thing, but not all reachs are created equal, and therefore some of them, well, he says Kule Alma agrees by the, right, why does Kule, the only thing that's problematic, what I'm saying, is why does Tosfos say everybody agrees that by a ticha, when it's hot bread, that's forbidden? In other words, shouldn't Levi say it's not a thing? Yeah, Lexi, what do you say?
I mean, I think there's a couple answers. One is that it's just like the neatest move to harmonize our sugyot, because amongst other things, like, part of the struggle of a lot of the Rishonim is that we usually paskin like Rav and we usually paskin like Rava, right? And so if they are actually at odds with each other, then we have a bit of a difficulty as to who to paskin like.
What's the
And
svara?
I know, as I'm saying, so again, we have this difficulty that is presented, and then in order to harmonize them, like, again, obviously you can always say, oh, in this one particular case, we don't paskin like that person, even though we usually do. But the Tosfot prefer not to do that. And so you can't say, we paskin like Rava, and actually Rav also thinks Recha lav miltahi, because very clearly it's impossible to argue that those people think Recha is not substantive. And so the only other possibility is to say that actually Rava just exists on this larger continuum, that he just has like a higher standard for what needs to constitute.
No, my question is about Levi.
And so he would agree.
My question is
with
about
Rav.
Levi. How does Levi, who says Recha lav milta, even by the basar, he agrees by the gavna? Because so you have to say like this. You have to say that Levi, when he says by the basar that it's not a thing, he means to say it's not intense enough to be a thing. But he agrees that Recha could be a milta in certain circumstances.
Right. Then maybe the patchama v'chabit petucha, or something even more intense than that, is actually the thing where even Levi is aligned and Rava is one step to the right of him, where like if we want Rava and Rav to be aligned potentially, then Rava would agree that in the like basar cooking in the oven case, then that's recha milta he, but in the batiha case, it's not a milta. And Abaye says even though it's a milta. And so like we have all of these ticks along the thing. I think part of the difficulty is that in our Avodah Zarah sugya, we already present Abaye as like acknowledging that there is this spectrum of Recha Miltahi, and that is presented as being in contrast to the Rava position of Recha Lav Miltahi, which seems to imply that Abaye acknowledges that sometimes Recha is a Milta and sometimes it's not. And so if Rava is in disagreement with him, it does seem to imply that Rava truly does not think Recha is substantive.
Right. I think what Tosfos has to say is that Levi, when he said Recha is lav milta, he really didn't mean it's never a thing. He just meant in this case it's not a thing. Joel?
Yeah, I mean, I think we'd have to ask, just from a practical halachic case, when Levi says lav milta, is it because of the type of the substance, the meat, like meat from meat, it's not strong enough, or is it the geometry of the situation, right? That in roasting next to each other is one thing, but sitting like bread on a barrel that has one opening might be different or something like that.
Right.
They could.
In other words, what Tosfos is saying, I'm just pointing this out, it's not the only way to read it. Tosfos is understanding that Levi holds that in certain geometries or in certain circumstances, Recha is Milta. And so he never, when he said Recha is Lav Milta, doesn't mean what it sounds like, which is that he's saying it's never a thing, but he's just saying in these cases it's not a thing, which is very problematic because it sounds like he's resorting to a well-known klal. It doesn't sound like he's saying here it's not a thing. He's just saying he's resorting to a principle that he holds in many cases, and that applies here. So you have to still you can say so. Tosfos holds that principle is a principle with many hues. In other words, there's some recha. It means recha is not always a thing, and that's what Tosfos is saying here. So if I go back again to this Tosfos, he's saying there's many hues of smell. And in certain cases, like this bread on top of a barrel, everybody agrees that Recha is milta. And Levi misunderstood him when he said lav milta. He in general, he just meant usually, but not always. And then he says Recha de basar plugta de Rav Levi. Right, that's what we saw there. He holds that it's not a thing, and Rav holds that it is a thing, but. And they're all just arguing about where is the spectrum, on what line, where should the line be drawn? V'reach de batiha kaimelan kerava. We hold like Rava, which is that it's permitted. Lamata mihem pat sonenet v'chavit petucha, and then lower than that, the next lower level is cold bread and an open barrel. O pat chama v'chavit megufa, or a closed barrel and a warm bread, and that would be mutter, okay, I guess according to everybody. Vaha mutter lekule alma patsonenet v'chavit megufa, but everybody agrees. I don't that middle case. I don't know. Yeah, there's maybe some machloket over there, but mutter lekule alma is patsonen v'chavit megufa. If it's cold bread and a covered barrel, then everybody agrees. The linyan recha de hatam. Halacha. So first of all, he gave this whole step ladder of different dinim, like as it goes down in severity, as recha goes down in severity, how everybody falls out. For the Indian recha the hatam halacha. In other words, when he says hatam, we're over here in Avodah Zarah. So he means in psachim, where we talked about the meat. So he says for the Indian recha the hatam halacha kirav, not like Levi. The Amar Recha Milta he. And what he meant was in this case, Recha is Milta. But now he's going to limit this. And this we already saw this a little bit in Tosfot. He sees it again. But that's only in those days when they had small oven. And that would be like cooking underneath some kind of covering, like some kind of pan that everything is held close together. Shekarin trapid galaz, she'ofin tachteha apashtida. You cook under that maybe some kind of cake. Tripod, it's tripod, but it's not enough to say tripod. It's a covered thing. But yes, tachet pashtida kamo kain recha miltahi. So it's like so. In a small oven like that we still have, Tosfos says, and we make our pots, our pies in it, then that would be considered recha because it's small. Don't worry about recha. Ubilvad shelo yeh piatanur satum, as long as it's not fully closed. Now, how can it be fully? You could have like a pizza oven sometimes fully closed. Ve'ein lachush. So if it's fully closed, even if it's big, maybe it will be a problem. Ve'ein lachush im afu pashtida shel basar im trita. Maybe it's like a tort. I don't know, a cake shel gvina. So, in French, they say a tort is like a cake. So pashtida shel basar im trita shel gvina b'tanor echad, and we're talking about the same time. So you're cooking here your empanada, or whatever you want to call it, your chicken pot pie and your cheesecake in his oven at the same time. Ein lachush tanur echad. Rak shelo yigu zeh b'zeh. They shouldn't touch each other. By the way, they didn't have oven racks, so they weren't one on top of the other, which might be more of a problem. They were side by side on the floor of the oven. So just bear that in mind before you start jumping in to do this. Rak shelo yigu zeh b'zeh. Oh, im ha'isser. Oh, ima isser. What is that? Perush? I don't know. Kagon. Oh, ima isser. Perush kagon pashtida shel nevela. Or similarly, if it would be a heter, but it'd be an isser ma'amish. Ein lachush. You could cook. You could, your roommate who's not kosher. You could cook with your food that is kosher. Ein lachush kamochen im shamnunita isser al hamard. And this is also sorry. That's it. And now he goes on. The ein lachush kamochen im shamnunita isser al hamarda shekorin pala belaz. So this is like some kind of like I think in a pizza shop they have this big flat like spoon or spatula that they stick in and take out the pizza. So if the cook uses that to take out the treifa food and then he uses it to take out your food, so there could be oil on it or fat on it, and it could ruin your food. But he says about that, in other words,
I think the Ein Rav Nachum, I think the Ein Lachush goes to the previous, and that was Kimochen, the Shamni, because he's gonna say Asur, right?
Oh, I see. You're right.
Unless it's not.
You're right. I put the comma in the wrong place. Thank you. Ein lachush kamochen.
I think it's Ein Lachush period. Kamochen. Now he's going to go to the
Ein
case.
lachush. Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, it's always important where you put the period. Okay. Thank you very much. Belaz asur litain heter aleha kol hayom. So since he used it for treif, you can't use it for iser. You can't use it for heter that day. But the next day you could. Kisheino bat yoma. Mihu kisheino bat yoma mutter l'shtamesh ba. You could use it l'chatchila. So here's an interesting idea. So this thing has got fat on it, and it's forbidden. Now, why can you use it the next day? We have this gezerah, eino bat yoma, atu bat yoma. In other words, if we permit you to use 24-hour pots that have been not used 24 hours, then you might, by mistake or come to, for whatever reason, use a freshly used pot, and that would be forbidden. So therefore, we made a gezerah. But Tosus comes up with this chiddush here, lo gazru, sheino bat yomo atu bat yomo afilu l'chatchila kevan de lo efshar. In this case, they didn't gazer because then there would be no other way to live. So the word gozer here, shaharei ha'ovet kochavim lo yishma lo la'asot mereda chadasha b'kol pam upam. He's not going to take a new one just because you came into the shop. Sheyishpoch aleh Hashem. In other words, every time that oil falls on it, he's going to make a new one. Aval im, he's not going to do that. Aval im yatsa shamnunita iser denevela v'nagala heter. Oh, tachat heter asur. But of course, if the actual fats would touch your food, then it would be forbidden. But he's saying you can use this pot. You can't use it the same day, but you can use it the next day, and you don't have to make him change it. I don't know how that's going to work out logistically. I guess he'll have a day when he makes the pies and a day when he makes the bread. If it's bread day, you can come and get the bread, but you can't. If he makes pies and bread at the same time, you have a problem. We're going to see later there's an opinion that says only the first bread, I don't know if we'll see it, but there's an opinion that says only the first bread would be forbidden because the first bread will absorb any fat that was on it, and the second bread already won't be getting anything from that oven spatula. So wait a second. Let's summarize. Basically, the main point I wanted to see in this Tosfos is that he has these different levels, but that according to everybody, according to Tosfos, everybody believes that Reicha is milta sometimes. And all these statements that Reicha is not milta is just in this case and in that case. And the arguments are just when. Everybody agrees that Reicha is not always a milta, and everyone agrees that it sometimes is a milta. And it's just a question of they argue about in which cases. That's Tosfos' approach. And then he also brings up these interesting dinim about ovens being big, that he sort of takes the whole din away. Because our ovens are so big that we don't have this whole din of smell, and that every people would say different opinions here. They would be much more lenient. In fact, they would be totally lenient. Question, comments, thoughts. All right.
I have a question. Did I miss the connection between the giant spatula conversation and smell?
Yes,
The
Joel.
answer
What do
is
you
yes,
say?
I missed the connection.
Well, no, I think the connection to Tosfos is they're making their bread in ovens that are cooking non-kosher things as well. And then they're like, well, now there's the other, you may have the question, well, how did we get it out of the oven in the first place? Right. Like we're in the second place,
Right,
I guess.
right.
And they said, oh,
In other
yeah.
words, yeah, good. Right.
That
Tosfos
discussion
does
proves the reality of smell not being an issue.
right. I guess Tosfos is sort of paskening according to what people are doing. It must be that Reicha is not a milta here, and it must be our ovens are big enough, and it must be that these spatulas are okay because you can buy bread, you can buy a baguette in the in the French bakery, and who knows what he was doing there otherwise.
But whatever you hold about the spatula, the whole discussion doesn't bring up smell. So it shows you
No,
that that's not the thing we're worried about. We're worried about if there's shemen, that would be an issue, or if
well,
there's
he
binyoma.
already said the ovens are big, so we don't worry about smell. Notice he said that if it's completely satum, if it's completely covered, then it's the oven is that would be a problem. And the Ramah is going to say, not in the Darkei Moshe, he's going to say that even a little crack is enough to take you out of that category of being completely covered, and that's kind of miduyak in the Tosfot, because the Tosfot says if it's completely covered, so anything that's not completely covered, and he says even the vent just that any oven would have would be enough. Any oven, so that if the fire is in the oven, there's two possibilities, right? The fire could be underneath the oven, and the oven could be like a sealed box on top of a fire. But if the oven is got the fire in it, then you'd have to have a vent to let oxygen in. Okay. I want to go now to the Tur Tzadi Zion. I don't know. I made it a little tiny note on my Daf Makorot, but that actually is the main discussion is there in Tzadi Zion, which is Basar B'chalav. Oh, but you know what? We'll take a break now, and I'll let you guys get the Tzadi Zion. I see it's 10 o'clock. So we'll take a break for 5 minutes. Okay. Let's return. And we're in Gimel in Tzadi Zion. Eitan, you want to read Gimel?
Sure. Katava Rashba, Pat she'afa o b'tanur im habasar, yesh me'gaonim she'asru le'echol ota b'pat she'reicho ketamo, v'yesh matirin, v'chen nir'ed, adkan. So the Rashba wrote that bread that you bake in an oven with meat, some Gonim forbid eating that bread because I assume it's treif meat.
Or no, I think we're in the chapter of Basar B'chalav. And
Oh, so
perhaps what
you
he
can't eat that bread because you might
maybe
eat
he
it
means you
with
can't eat it with milk. Let's just
right.
learn it like that.
Or can't eat it, period, because it's bread that's either meat or milk, or meat in this case, and you may
Right, you
accidentally.
can't eat bread that is meat or milk. There's a rule that we didn't learn it yet, but there's a rule like that. You can't eat bread unless it's made in a special shape, which maybe this is made in a special shape, but whatever, however you want to learn it, you can't eat it. The point it doesn't really matter for us. You can't eat it, or you can't eat it with milk, because the main reason is the because. The main point is the because it has reach.
It's reach, and reach is like flavor, it's saying here. Uh,
Right,
but some people permit it, and that's what the Torah thinks is right. Or that's what the Rashba thinks is right, sorry.
right. Can't, that's what the Rashba thinks is right. All
Right.
right, keep going.
V'chein pasak Rashi, derech alav miltahi, u'mutar la'achlo, afilu b'chalav. And Rashi also ruled this way, that recha is not a halakhically significant thing, and then therefore you can eat this bread even with dairy.
That was the Rashi that we
Very,
saw on Levi when he paskined like Levi.
right. Rabbeinu tam pasak derecha miltahi. Umihu davka betanur katan kamo shalahem, אבל בתנורים שלנו הגדולים שרי.
That's what we saw in the Tosfot. It's exactly what we saw in the Tosfot, that the big ones, like ours, are permitted. But he paskins essentially like Rav, but in the end of the day, it's the same din. In other words, it's almost like Rashi and Tosfos were agreeing about the same din and the reality of the time that people could buy bread from the goy, and they just gave different reasons. According to Rashi, it's because Recha is lav milta, and according to Tosfos, it's because the oven is big.
Right.
Go ahead.
וכתב בספר המצוות, ופרשו לי רבותיי, המחזיק 12 עשרונים זהו תנור גדול. And it's written in
Right.
the Sefer HaMitzvot, and my rabbis taught me that a large oven is one that holds 12 esronim worth of volume.
Right, which Joel will tell us is that our modern ovens are exactly borderline.
If you go by the Chazon Ish, we're borderline for some of them, but if you go by like Rav Na, then you're fine, I think. So
Okay. All right. So now, Eitan, if you would read the Beit Yosef at the very beginning. Sorry, skip the first one. Just the second one. It says Parakate Sad Soili, and just read it. Pretty much, it's a review of everything we saw. Just read the first part. You don't have to translate it. You can just read it.
Can I just clarify one thing on the our ovens piece quickly? Sorry.
Yeah.
Just like this is all about at the same time. This isn't necessarily about like we haven't
Oh
talked yet
yeah,
about
exactly.
consecutively.
If you're talking, yeah, we're talking about
I just want to
putting.
say, yeah.
Yeah, it's right. It could be right for sure. Right. If it's one after the other, that could even be much more lenient. Yeah, we're gonna see. I forget where I saw it. I saw it in my preparation
It's in the
that
base.
even if there's a remaining smell in the oven, but the food has been removed, you could still use it. Whereas modern poskim say some poskim say you should let the oven cool down before you put in the alternate type of food, milk and meat. But the Tosa, I saw, you're saying it's the Beit Yosef, says that if the smell is just lingering, that's also not a problem. So probably the heat is also probably lingering. Anyway, so go on here from Parakate Satsoli.
בפרק כיצד צולין גרסינן, אמר רב, בשר שחוטה שמן שצלעו עם בשר נבלה כחוש, אסור, מאי תמה מפתמה מהדדה, ולוי אמר, אפילו בשר שחוטה כחוש שצלעו עם בשר נבלה, שמן מותר, מאי תמה ריחה בעלמא היא וריחה לאו מילתא היא. ושקל
Oh, that's our Gemara. That's our Gemara. And now go on.
ושקל ותרי תלמודה במילתא,
right, that's an important phrase. In other words, even I'll translate it. Just the Gemara goes on. Like it's almost funny to me that the base Yosef is like goes on. It has what to say, whatever. But I don't really care. I'm not going to bring you the whole discussion. And then he goes on. Go ahead.
Ve'ik
And now he
tu
goes on, and
hatam.
there's also, it says there, ve'ita tu hatam.
Tane Rav Kahana Bare Derav Chinana Saba. Pad sha'afa'a im hatzli batanur asur le'echol bekutach.
Right? We didn't see this, but he says you can't. This is about the milk and meat. The bread that was cooked with kosher food, you can't eat with kutach, which is milchik. Okay.
Right. Hahi bemita di'tzvaya bahade
So
besara.
that's fish that were roasted with meat.
Asra rava miparzkaya lamechla bekutacha. Right.
Right.
So
In other words, he also forbid this fish to be eaten with kutach. The katav Rashi.
katav Rashi dihilchata kalevi. Tosfot katvu dihilchata kerav. V'ta'anot shtei hasvarot halo hem mevuarot yafe b'divrei arif. V'haran b'perek Gida Nashe u'b'perek Batra d'Avodah Zara b'divrei Tosfot. V'katvu Tosfot b'perek Etzad Solin al divrei Rabbeinu Tam. Uvetanurim shelanu nir'eh demutar la'afot lechem imoto pashtida ho'il u'mechusot hetev have ke'en shteik derotz ve'afilu paldunish sheyesh larchik ein nir'eh l'rebbe sheyehe asur sheyesh arvir habeb batanur v'hevel mitpashet ad kan l'shana.
Okay, so that's the basic idea that we've seen. The big ovens and the covering of the food. Is it enough that you have big ovens? You also cover it. In other words, you need both requirements or one requirement. Seems like Tosos kind of says both things. It seems like he kind of says a big oven is enough, and then he says, and also covering is good. But is that when it's a big oven, or is that when it's a small oven? Not clear 100%. All right, let's skip a little bit to Vatosfot. I'm skipping now about 10, 15 lines in my print. And it says Vatosfot and then Sograyim Samich Vav Divra Matchil Rava Amar. You see that?
Oh yeah.
It's like in parentheses. The parentheses is always easy to find.
Yeah.
So Samach Vav. Vatosfot.
Tosfot v'harosh katvu b'perek Batra d'Avodah Zara al divrei Rabbeinu Tam tepasak kerav dedavka b'tanurim ketanim shelahem shayu mikasim pihem v'lekach nichnas reach shel zeh b'zeh aval b'tanurim shelanu upihem patuach ein lachush.
Here he
So
seems to say that the main factor is whether it's open.
right.
Okay, go on.
And if it's open and if it's big.
He said, Ketanim, theirs were small and covered, but ours are
big.
open.
Uh,
Tanarim Shalano Pihen. I guess Tarim Shalano, and you, I guess, assume, and that means big, and they're open. So big and open, but fine, yeah.
V'katvo Rabbeinu b'siman kufchetz.
Oh, so Katavo means Rabbeinu is a tour. He paskined like that in Siman Kufchet. That's what it means, Katavo. He paskined like that.
V'katvo ora tosavot de
Katvu, here's Katvu.
Oh, katvu, right, okay. V'katvu ora tosavot de tachat hamachevet shalanu shekorin trifid sheofin tachtei apashtira.
Machvat, that's machvat. That's a frying pan.
Oh, machvat.
Machvat.
Reicha miltahi kamo b'tanarim shalahem.
Okay, good. So that's review kind of. Now we're going to get to a very interesting thing here. Skip ahead where it says Gimel Bet.
Varosh.
Varosh. And here we have some nice ideas here. We're going to bring the riff, a very important riff here.
V'harosh b'perek Batra d'Avodah Zara hevi divrei Rashi v'divrei Rabbeinu Tam v'lo hichriya b'neihem. V'Rabbeinu katav b'siman kufchet shemaskanat harosh keRabbeinu Tam v'lo yadati minayin lo ve'efshar shetamo mipni she'hevi divarav levasof.
So what does he say there?
So basically saying that the Rosh brings both Rashi and Rabbeinu Tam, and he doesn't make a he doesn't rule on them, but
But the
where is it?
tour,
But the
but
Torah rules on them.
the
The
tour,
Torah,
no, the tour
right,
says that the Rosh did rule on it.
right,
And he
and
doesn't understand why the tour says that about his father. And he says maybe it's because he brought the Rosh at the end. And I think, Joel, did we see this exact same statement in the Beis Yosef and another Siman where there
He
was
does he does it a lot. And I don't know, Rev Nachum, I've always wanted like doesn't he maybe assume the Rosh maybe spoke to his son every once in a while, told him some stuff he didn't write down? It's not so crazy.
yeah, it's not so crazy. Um, Also, maybe he had a rule like this that whoever he brings at the end is maybe that was his father told him that rule. But I
Yeah.
think I even remember this exact same discussion in another Siman. I don't remember where he says he didn't machriya, but he brought the one at the end, and maybe that's the reason why. But yeah, right. It's like exactly. It's like you could ask, although you could ask, why didn't Tosfos and Rashi ever argue? You know, why didn't Rashi ever tell Tosfot to the oh, his grandson? Maybe it was too far apart. But anyway, yeah, I agree with you. You could trust the tour to understand the Rosh, but the point is, Beis also says, I have just the text in front of me, and I don't know. All right, go on. Vaharif. Here we're getting to, so that's the tour over in our Siman Kufchet. Vaharif,
Ma'arif beperek Yida Nashe Pasak Kalevi Demarecha Lav Miltahi. So the Rif Paskins like Levi says Reichas Lav Miltahi Mihu Katav Da'adkan Lo Share Levi Ele B'diavad Avalo Lechatchila
right. So
Daha.
here you go. Now, this is an important point. So the Rif is paskening like Levi, like Rashi, but not that it's totally mutter. It's only mutter b'diavad.
Right.
And how does he prove it?
Dahashitzla o ka'amar, velo ka'amar tzolin, lechatchila. So he says
Uh,
they roasted it. So he's reading the Gemara like they roasted in the past, and now that it's been roasted, it's okay, but it's not like generally we do this thing. We generally roast the things
Right.
together. Vikatav od, dahadatani Rav Kahana, padsha afa'a im hatzli asur la'ochla im hakotach. Vahahi beneta de itzvaya bahade besara v'asra rava miparzakaya lamechla bekotacha. Lav kerav bilchud asra ela afilu kelevi asire lamichlinu bekutach. Right. So
And
he further wrote that when Rav Kahana brings up these cases of the bread that was roasted with meat or the fish that was roasted with meat that you can't eat with the dairy, he's not positing just like Rav, but he's also saying this is even
even
Levi's saying that you can't eat these
even
things
Levi
together.
is saying that, and therefore it's not a proof. Like Tosfos tried to use it as a proof that the halacha is like Rav, not like Levi. But he's saying, no, I can tell you, says the Rif, that that's also Levi agrees to that. And now he's going to say why.
Uh, my tama, right? That's where, yeah, my tama, kevan deshari lemichlinu below kutcha. Ish sharetz lehu lemichlinu bekutacha, ishtakach kaman deshar leitzvuye basar shchuta bahade nevela lechatchila.
And he
So
only
what's
quotes some of the Rif here. It's actually nice to see the whole Rif, but he quotes only some of it. And I'll just tell you what the main idea of the Rif is. It's not exactly clear here. He's saying it looks like people will come to do it like lechatchila. And that's what he says. And Levi never permitted that. He says, "Kevin the shari the michle below kut isharit lehu lemichlinu bekutach ishtara command the shari la atuye basar b'shchuta bahade nevela lechatchila." If they let you eat it with the kutak, then people will think that Levi's din is even lechatchila, is in only b'diavad. It's a little bit strange, this logic, but he gives a better logic, which is that he says it's like Devar Sheyesh Lo Matirin. Remember, we learned Devar Sheyesh Lo Matirin? So Devar Sheyesh Lo Matirin normally means that the thing will become mutter if I wait till tomorrow, or I wait a certain amount of time. But here he's expanding the idea of the Sheish Matir, and he's saying, why eat this bread? Why should we let you eat this bread with milk? We'll eat it with pesto. I don't know. Eat it with something parv. Eat it with hummus. Don't eat it with the kutach. And therefore, since we're not going to forbid you from eating it, we're just forbidding you from eating it in a certain way. We're happy to do that, even though it would be normally b'diavad and mutter. But by the way, this fits very well together with his b'diavad. It's only because he says that Levi says it's only b'diavad mutter that he can now say this. If Levi would have been l'chatchila, then why would Levi agree to this? It's l'chatchila mutter, so you should be able to eat it with anything. It's rei chalav milta. So he's saying no. It's sort of like, it's almost like the Rif is kind of agreeing with Tosfot that Reicha is not a black and white binary question. It's kind of Aser, even though it's kind of Mutter. So it's only Mutter b'diavad. We're going to, hopefully we'll see one of the commentaries that says exactly how we hold. When we see the Shulchan Aruch, we'll see what the exact way to think about it is. But anyway, everyone sees how it's like the Rashi Yeshua Matirin. Why should we let you eat it with milk? So that's why Levi says. That's why That's why Levi would agree with this Rav, whose name I can't pronounce. Mipar Zakia. So okay, so that's the Rif's explanation of that. It's like the Rashi Yeshua Matirin, or that you'll come to think that it's mutter lechatchila. And now what does the Ran say?
Varan katav tamacher dekevan shereach habasar nirgash bahem habahem hatoem oto yehe savor shemamasho shel basar nivla bahem v'ki achiluhu bekuchta mitchaze kabasar b'chalav umishum hachi asur. So the
what
Ran
does he
says
say?
that that it's going to taste so much like meat that when you actually eat it with this dairy dip or whatever it is, it's gonna look like you're actually eating basar b'chalav, and therefore it's asur.
Or you're going to feel like it is.
Right.
I think it's almost like you're going to feel.
Right, you're gonna feel like you're actually eating.
Mitchazi, it seems to you. Mitchaz, I think it means mitchaz. It doesn't mean that it looks like it, because nobody can tell just by looking that the bread has a flavor in it. But it mitchazi kebasar b'chalav. It's almost like he's saying the exact opposite of. It's exactly the opposite of the Rif. Why is it the exact opposite? Because he's saying it's 100%, even though it's 100% not Recha is not milta, 100% black and white, but even so, but the bread has such a strong smell of the meat, even though we're telling you it's irrelevant. Halachically, it's irrelevant, ikar adin, but it just is unseemly. It just seems bad to let people do that, so we're not going to allow it. But it comes out that he's almost saying that there are no levels. Even this extreme case where it's fully absorbed lots of meat. Maybe I'm exaggerating maybe a little bit now, but I'm just trying to say that he's saying a different attitude. His attitude is, it's not that it's at a low level of flavor and that's why we forbid it. It's got, even if it's because it has a high level, we're going to forbid it, but only forbidding it like because of a minhag kind of. Actually, just a second. Maybe a minute. I want to look at Kufchet for a second.
He's sort of confirming that there's no formal flavor transfer by saying we have to add it on afterwards, because it's clearly not flavor transfer, but it feels like flavor transfer. So let's make it usher.
Exactly. That's exactly what I'm trying to say.
This makes me think of these flavors of Pringles that are now very popular. They have hashgacha, but it's like carnitas tacos Pringles. And it's like supposed to taste like literally like milk and meat flavor. And they're dairy, they're OUD. But it's like mamash nirgash, like it tastes like bacon.
Right. There's these restaurants in Jerusalem now that serve, I probably have them in America too, that serve hamburgers with like parve cheese and with bacon, even with lamb. They call it fakin because it's or not fake. Is it fakin? I don't know, or laken, I don't know. It's from lamb. Um, and I don't know. To me, I'm just like it's mutter, it's mutter. What's the difference?
Right, but here it's a real smell of meat, not approximated. Like the source of it is maybe it's formally not flavor transfer, but its source was an actual piece of meat.
Right. You're saying it's there, it's the source is a mutter thing. All right, I'm looking for something, I don't see it now, but I'm looking just I'm looking for where where they say it's minhag. Yeah, if you look, well, we'll get there hopefully, but it I don't know if we should. All right, well, I'll wait till we get there. We'll get there in the Darkei Moshe. Darkei Moshe says, "Nohagin lahatirecha." The anu nohagin lahatirecha milta b'diavad of alachatchila yesh le'asor. In other words, follow minhag. All right, wait. So we're still in the Ran. Let's finish the Ran here.
Okay, right. So he just said that when it comes to the bread cooked with, or the stuff that's cooked with meat, that you can't dip that with dairy. Ma she'ein ken bebasar shchuta shetzla'a in basar nevela she'ein reicha v'tama shel nevela nirgash b'shchuta klal. So that's so it's not true. The same doesn't go if you have kosher meat with nevela, because the flavor from the nevela, I guess it tastes the same as the kosher meat, so it doesn't. It's not going to
Right. This is
transfer
a very
flavor. It's not
interesting
going to.
point. He's saying that when are we lenient by milk by recha when it's min b'mino? Essentially, when it's min b'mino, and it comes out that there you don't feel the flavor. So you should be lenient. But if it would be so that would be with like treifa meat. But what about if it would be pork? Maybe you would flavor. Maybe you would feel it. Then maybe it would be forbidden. But the case wasn't pork. Well, the fish case was dafka where you would feel it because the fish are different from the meat.
And if you argue that it matters if it's pork, then you also need to argue that it's matters if it's beef and lamb, because those taste different from each other
Yeah,
as well.
even though kosher beef, right? Exactly, exactly. If you would have treifa lamb and kosher beef, then maybe he would forbid it because he would feel like you're eating that treifa lamb.
The case of
Okay,
Levi is
what?
is is the case of Levi is sleeve at Devar Acher, and Rashi at least says Devar Acher is Chazir.
Uh-huh.
He matirs it.
And he mastered it. That's so that's a kasha on the Ran, maybe. No, I don't know. Seems like
Maybe.
kind of seems like a kasha on the Ran. Unless he'll tell you that it's not min b'mino. The Ran could answer. He said, I didn't really mean, don't listen to Rav Nachum. I didn't mean min b'mino, or I just meant it's not nirgash and beef and lamb are close, even though they're different min, or pig, and it's all meat, but bread is very different from meat.
But also, I think what he's about to say will explain why there's a difference between
Okay,
the.
so read on.
Says v'od she'efshar shechumra hu she'ichmiru b'basar v'chalav yoter mishar isurin mishum delo b'dile inshe minei mipnei she'kol echad heter b'fnei atzmo hichmiru bo yoter b'shar isurim kmo shehichmiru bo shelo laha'aloto im basar al shulchan ma she'ein ken b'shar isurin adkan. So
Exactly. So he's saying since milk and meat are normally eaten, people so we have to be strict with it so that people like what's the point? So people shouldn't do this. But by pork, people are normally separated from it. I don't see the lot. What's the logic? Explain to me the logic.
I think what he's saying is when it comes to dairy and meat, people aren't sort of disgusted by those two things individually. So they're not, so they have to be sort of, you have to make more machmir rules about those two things mixing, because it's not going to be so gross to someone. But when it comes to pork,
But no,
someone's going to say,
b'dili inish mine It's not that it's disgusting to you. It's that we use that term by Pesach. Like, in other words, like normally
You don't stay away
you
from it.
you don't stay exactly. It's not that it's disgusting. It's that pork is something you don't normally use, but milk and meat are things you have in your house. It's just a thing that you're constantly coming in contact with.
But
So
there's a
therefore,
disgust that's strafe also that I think can fit in that concept. Like, right, there's no
you're saying that
disgust. I really don't want to eat trafe, but I'm eating milk flavors and meat flavors independently all the time. It's related to the same thing you're saying. I'm just sort of synthesizing it. The avoidance comes from many angles when it comes to trafe meat.
in other words, but what's the logic of the Ran? The logic is that if because it's pork flavor in your bread, we'll let you eat it. But if it would be milk flavor in your bread, we won't let you eat it with beef. Because why? Because you're more reticent to eat pork, and but the whole problem of the bread is nothing. The whole you might come to cook milk and meat together. Well, what's the gezerah? What's the chashash? What is the worry that you're going to do? I don't quite understand it.
I mean, I do think that there's like you can frame it as like, yes, it theoretically, like not having caution in this leads to a theoretical of actual problematic interaction. But I do think honestly, in a lot of ways, it's just being used as an explanation for why there are like certain chumras that we have with Basar V'chalav that we just like similar to like the putting on the shulchan together, right? That there's no prohibition on putting tray food on your table, but there is a prohibition on having meat and dairy on your table together. And there's an element in which it's being used as like, yeah, there are just some times where like we're more machmir about basar v'chalab than about other things because we're really trying to be like super
Okay,
dafka about those
you're
not
saying my
mixing
question is a
even in
good
the
question.
vaguest capacity. I do
You're saying
think
we're not.
that
There may not be a real chashash. You're saying it may just be that it's in the category of milk and meat, and that category we're stricter with because of various reasons. Hey, Joel, what are
I
you going to
also
say?
just think that the Rif is trying to reconcile the Rabbi Farzikia with the fact that he thinks the pshat is we paskin rechalav miltahi, and the people are trying to defend the Rif as to how we can paskin both of those things, and it is kind of difficult. Like objectively, it is, I think, a difficult thing to reconcile.
Joel.
You know, I mean, I think both of them are found in your kitchen. So if you're gonna like, you have that moment of like, well, I ate it like this with Recha, and I really like, I'm tempted. It's much easier to violate milk and meat together in your kitchen than it is like you have to go out and buy the
You're not
pork.
giving me an example. What's the concrete example? What are you
Give
going to
you
do
an
wrong?
example, like I'm in one of those places where I'm in like, a little bit, not being so machmir, and I'm like, oh, what
In
can
other
I
words,
do?
if
And
we let you eat the milky bread with the meat, then you'll come to use a milky fork to eat the fleshik meat.
exactly. It's
Something
it's
like
more
that.
simple.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. I hear it. All right. Let's go on. Radat Rambam. We're not going to read this all, but the next bit, a little bit, we'll read. Go
Okay,
on.
okay. בדעת
Don't worry.
הרמב"ם כדעת הריף שכתב בפרק ט"ו מהלכות מחלות אסורות, אין סולין בשר שחוטה עם בשר נבלה או בהמה טמאה בתנור אחד, ואף על פי שאין נוגעין זה בזה, ואם צלען הרי זה מותר. ואפילו הייתה האסורה שמנה הרבה, והמותרת רזה, שהריח אינו אוסר, אלא טמאו של איסור. ובפרק ט' כתב, פת שאפה עם הצלי ודגים שצלען עם בשר, אסור לאוכלן בחלב.
Okay. So you see, so the Rambam has this kind of intermediate position like the Rif. Why do I say intermediate? Because he's saying we usher lachatchila, but mutter b'diavad, right? That's right. He's saying we're gonna we're essentially holding like Levi, but only b'diavad. Not that's the chiddush of the Rif. Levi never meant to say lachatchila, only b'diavad. V'im salan mutar, and then he comes and says, but by milk and meat we're going to be more strict, just like the Rif and the Ram. By milk and meat, we're going to say asur lochlan b'chalav. So it's like the Rambam also holds this idea of Devar sheyesh lo matirin or something, or maybe it's another Gezerah de Rabbanan, but he holds that you can't eat them with milk because why should we let you eat them in another way? Presumably, he didn't say why, but presumably. Comments? Okay. Here, Josie, you want to read this Mordechai? Mordechai? Skip ahead to where it says Mordechai.
Sure. המרדכי including הגלות מימוניות פרק ט"ו מהלכות מחלות אסורות כתבו וזה לשונו נהגו נקיי הדעת דמנגצה
Magensa.
דמגנצה
Magensa is a famous place.
לתקן כיסוי לפשטידה או לפלדון כשאופין אותם עם הפת, אבל בלא כיסוי לא דהווה כפת חמה וחבית פתוחה. So the Mordechai is taking a different, and then the Hagal Maimoniot are taking a.
No, you have to read like this. Ubelo kisui. It says ubelo kisui lo. Then no. Dahave kepat chama v'chavit patucha.
So they're saying you have to put these in a. You have to prepare them in a like you have to cover the spatula. It sounds like he's writing here.
No. We're talking about the pashtida, the pie. This is kind of a source. Yeah, this is a source for the idea of covering your food when you put it in the oven with aluminum foil. In other words, cover the. And it's not enough that the pie has dough on top of it. You need to also cover it with aluminum foil.
Because otherwise, it's like the hot bread with an open It's like bread with an open vat.
Exactly. Go on.
Exactly. ואסור לאכול הפת עם חלב, על פי הניקב שבכיסוי, עם חלב. ועל פי הנקב שבכיסוי נהגו לחוף שפופרת שלא יצא הריח, ואם שוב נבקע הכיסוי או השפופרת מותר. דהבי דיעבד. So if this, it looks like if something breaks through, we're accustomed to make a little hole, or a little plug rather, to keep the smell from spreading, and not come back to, spread from one place and then be. Did I lose everybody? Did I lose Rev Joel? Hello?
No, you're still here, Joseph. We can hear you.
I just lost Rav Nachum.
Oh, I pressed the wrong button. Wait, let me just explain that for a second. It says the asur le'achol apat im hachalav, that was on the previous part. Right. That's the pot that you didn't cover, or any case. It says ve'al pi hanekev shebekisui nagu lakof shoferet. So there was some kind of the cover that they put on. It wasn't aluminum foil because they didn't have aluminum foil, but it was some kind of cover with a hole in it, and they would stick a tube into it. Shelo yetzeh hareach. They would put something in it to either channel the smell out or maybe to stop it up. Ve'im shuv nikva kisui. But if it broke, o shfofer o ashfoferet. If that hole, if the covering broke or the tube broke, anyway, mutter da'avi diavad. Bilvad shelo yigapat l'shuman. So in other words, they had this idea of covering it also. All right, your connection isn't the greatest, so I'm gonna go to somebody else. I was hearing an echo. Maybe Jacob, you want to read the next part with katav od Delo amru recha milta.
Sure. I'm on. Oh, yes.
You
L'ktav
skip like
Ojalo
three
Amru.
sections.
Yeah.
Right.
L'ktav Ojalo Amru Recha Miltahi. Ela Dafka Litzli. Aval Lekdera Lekalamekas Klal. Kidamrinam Hatan. So he further writes that we only write Recha Miltahi specifically by roasting, but if I guess they're both cooking in the same pot, um, they're we don't need to worry at all. Like we say there in bet kaderot. Lo ki can bet kaderot low. Or I guess not cooking in the same pot, but I guess cooking in different pots. But
When
this,
they're cooking in different pots,
no, like
kevan dekol
there's
echad b'kedera b'fnei atzma lecha recha kulei. There
yeah.
isn't so much smell when
Hmm.
they're in separate pots. Why? He doesn't say.
Um
Can you
what?
tell me why? Why do
Well,
you
it's
think?
just if they're in separate pots, I guess it's almost like they're almost like in these contained units that are, it's not gonna, I guess if they're roasting it, it's gonna be like kind of on the same spit or something that maybe you would expect.
Right, maybe the walls of the pot sort of add like a
Uh,
protection between them.
yeah.
But I think there's actually something totally different going on here. I think it's because it's when it's in a pot, the juices collect there and it becomes boiling.
Mm.
And boiling is a lower heat than frying and then roasting.
Mm-hmm.
Right. My father used to say you can never get hotter than 212 degrees. No matter how much flame
Yeah.
you put on it, the water doesn't get hotter than that. Although my brother claimed that no, because the steam bubbles could make it a little bit hotter. Um,
Mm-hmm.
but in any case, boiling doesn't create the same amount of smell as roasting. And that's probably true. When you go past a roasting place, you smell it from far, but you don't smell the same thing by a place that's just boiling food. So it's in a pot, it's actually going to be turned into boiling. Okay. So I think that's what's going on. Go ahead. Now he says, Va'amrina Nami.
Bamrina nami beparak kama devodazara lo hilcha litzor me'amecha vrita Yisrael v'nachri she to bet kterot zo etel zo lo chasu lahem chachamim ad kan. Um, we also say in Parak Avodah I didn't go to like I guess the rock, which would be like I guess kind of the oven, communal oven, and see Israel and the non-Jew that
Sur might be a
have the
city. I think Sur is a city
oh
in Lebanon.
okay
He's saying like
uh,
it's a rhetorical question now.
oh did you never go to or in your days and see Israel and the Nachri with like their two pots with their lips of the pots against each other, and the Chamim didn't worry about. And even so, the Chlamim didn't worry about this.
Right.
It
Go ahead.
was also in the
Torah to buy it.
Torah Tabayit Katser v'im ba levaslam b'ktira zelat smo v'zelat smo afilu b'tanor makom tsar v'afilu po ha-kedera megula mutar
Kadera. Even if the top of the
v'afilu
pot is
pa-ha-kedera
open,
megula mutar
afilu lechatchila.
Nafilu chiras in reachamit bat gadol kol kach adkan.
And that's exactly what I was saying. The ein reach of mitbashlim, of boiling things, is not the same as roasting. Joel, what are you
Okay.
going to say?
Just one thing, right, is, and maybe I misheard, right? Lo halachta letzor mimecha verita Yisrael v'goy sheshaftu shtei k'dirot zo etzel zo. It's not that they're touching each other. It's the kira that they had two openings, one for each pot. And so they were in the same kira, you have two pots. and one is treif and one is not. So they're not touching each other. They're just
Okay,
shafat is the verb to put something in a kira. So
excellent. Thank you. And now we're going to turn to. So wait a second. What do we see there? That was just a few extra little dinim. We saw about big ovens. What else did we see? We saw about this chumrah of covering. And what was the main thing you taught us, Jacob?
I guess the main thing I taught is that if they're in separate pots, we don't need to worry about.
Even though they're in the same oven
Yeah.
or on top of an oven, as Joel pointed out. All right, let's turn to kufchet,
Even uncovered.
even uncovered. Kufchet,
Rav Nachum in the Shulchan Aruch or the Torah?
in the tour. Yeah. So Joel, maybe you'll read the beginning of the tour. The tour is quite short,
Yeah.
but I guess you could. Yeah, well, read what you can. Start reading, and I'll stop you.
All right. Reach shel isur shnita rev beheter kegon basar nevela shetzlao betanur im basar shchuta plige be Rav velevi Rav asar velevi share. Should I translate or should we feel like we
No,
know
I
that
think
already?
we've seen this now 3 times. You can go.
All right. Ufasak Rashi kelevi v'share v'chein katav bal halachot gedolot v'Rabbeinu Tam pasak kerav de'asar ve'afilu basar nevela kachush im basar shchuta shamen derecha ki hai miltahi. So same thing we saw. There's the Rashi side with the Bahag, which is like Levi, Rabbeinu Tam, Paskins at least so far, like Rav, and he says even as we saw if it's lean nevela but fatty kosher meat, even nonetheless recha is miltahi.
And I like the words derecha ki hai miltahi. In other words, this kind of reach is milta, and in other words, there's all kinds of reichot. The next time somebody tells you recha lav milta, you tell him that's not a binary question statement.
Exactly.
Okay.
All right. V'chatav harashba haskamat rov hamorim lehatir. Mikol makom lechatchila asur litzlotam betanur tsar. All right. So the Rashba says most people are matir about it, but lechatchila we shouldn't. If it's a small oven or a narrow oven, we shouldn't roast them together. Roast them together. V'im ba levashlam b'ktera, right? Kol echad leatzmo. But if you have each of them boiling, as you put it, which is nice. I like that definition in their own pot. Afilu betanur tsar, even if you put them in a small oven, ufpia ktera megula, but the mouth of the pot is open. Mutar. You can even do that lecharchila. She'ein reach hamitpashel kol kach oser, because the reach of boiling is not so prohibitive. I don't know what the right word is there, something like that. So
it's not so severe.
Yeah. So umaskanat. Should I keep going?
Yeah. But by the way, just that ties in very nicely with what Jacob just read to us, of course.
Yeah.
Okay. Umaskanat adoni.
Maskat adoni avi harosh zal ki Rabbeinu Tam. Right. So he says the bottom line of my father is like Rabbeinu Tam, which is like Rav, which is oser, at least in Sli. V'davka betanurim shelahem shem mechusim. Right, but only in their ovens, which were covered ovens, lechach nichnas hareach shel zeh bazeh, because then you get a nice chance for the smells to mix. But in our big ovens, which are open, it's an interesting question. Do you need both of those or just one of those? Ein lachush.
Exactly.
No worries. Okay.
Go on. Read, you can finish it.
Yeah. All right. Pat chama. This is we had this both in Pesachim and Avodah Zarah. Pat chama shemunachat al gabei chavit ptucha shel yain nesech. Asur lefisha koletet min hareach harbe. So if you have hot bread sitting on top of an open, idolatrous wine barrel, you cannot. You can't have that bread because it does a good job collecting the smell. Aval, which aval imapat sonenet. But if you have the bread is cold, even with an open barrel, or the opposite, pat chama v'chavit stuma, mutar. In that case, it's mutar because there it's not supposedly a very well collected reach at that point.
So right. So these are not so relevant dinim so much because we don't put bread on top of barrels of wine so much, but still good to know. Now read the last one. Hey.
Of course, we saw this. So you can, the whole for smelling the wine of idolatrous wine, you're allowed to smell from this. It doesn't count as a benefit. Perush nekev shosim bechavit le'ariach misham. He explains the whole thing. Misham beyayin im hutov. That's the whole used to smell the wine to see if it's
okay. Now I want you to look at the Darkei Moshe. Now there's a long Darkei Moshe Gimel, and I want to do just part of it. Everyone finds a Darkei Moshe Gimel. It's so look at where it says Vaha'iger Katav B'Shem Mahari Mulin.
Yeah, B'Shem Mulin, and since Shutim Maharil.
And then in parentheses it says Shut Maharil Hachadashot Siman Pei Gimel.
You want me to read? Or you want to
wait, just give a second for everybody to find it. This is in the Darkei Moshe. It says Vaha'iger Katav. And there's a parenthesis right after that, Siman Aleph, I guess. Reish Samech Bet. All right, so go ahead, Joel.
All right.
Aleph?
It might be, I don't know. I don't know.
Aleph and Reish, right. Aleph, there's 1,362. Right.
Yeah. Or 200. Yeah.
I never saw that written like that before, but okay.
I don't know for sure, but
you're right. Anyway, Iger Katav B'Shem Mahari Mulin. Go ahead.
Yeah, I don't know. Agim derecha lav miltahi b'diavad. Right. So we hold.
That's the key point that I wanted to say here. Oh. This I think is interesting. The anu nohagin derecha lav miltahi b'diavad. That our minhag is that it's not a thing, but only it's not a thing b'diavad. It is a thing l'chatchila. That kind of summarizes everything. All right, but go ahead.
It's better. Achen im goy afa pat im devar isur. Asur liknoto topat dehave kilechatchila. So if you have a non-Jew bakes bread and they bake it in an oven with something asur, you can't buy it because that is lechatchila. Aval.
Right. Now this is a very interesting question. That's why I wanted to talk about this. Very interesting question about what's called lechatchila, what's called b'diavad. And the Baal Iger is saying, if I go into the shop and I could buy a cucumber or bread, so I don't have to buy the bread. So it's l'chatchila. I'm going and spending my money for something that is doubtful about its kashrut. I shouldn't do it. That's only b'diavad is if my child brought it home already, now it's in the house, I don't have to throw it away. But why should I go and buy it? Says Baal Iger.
Yeah.
Im kain, wait, goshaf pat im davar isur asur liknot oto pat dahave kilachatchila. That's not called b'diavad. That's called lechatchila. Don't go and buy it. Go on.
Aval im elo pat acher. I'm in the middle of Wyoming. Mutar liknot mizo ad kan l'shano. But if there's no other bread available, then I can buy this. So.
All right, go on.
All right. But I just lost my place, of course, because I looked up. Shame on me. Velinira. Kedivrei Beit Yosef, shekatav b'siman tzadi zayin, al divrei agor or igur zo, ve'ein devrav nir'in beinai deb'diavad mutar gamor hu v'afilu yesh pat acheret lefanav mutar lechol mizo ad kan l'shano. So the Beit Yosef, the Ramah thinks like the Beit Yosef, who says that I don't understand the agur. That doesn't make any sense because this is b'diavad is mutar, and that's a b'diavad situation, and therefore, even if there's other bread,
the b'diavad, that is called b'diavad. What are you talking about? The bread is already made; it's after the fact. So he says it's not lechatchila; it's b'diavad because the bread is already there, and therefore, even if I have other bread, but I want this bread, I can buy it. So that's a very interesting definitional machloket about what is called b'diavad and lechatchila, and the Ramah and the Mechaber paskin that. Or believe that the Iger is wrong. Okay.
And everyone agrees that b'diavad you should be permissible. So and so. many
No, that's
different.
important. Siman Kuf Yud, which we may never get to, but
Kuf
it's
Yud,
in our section.
I have Kuf Yud Gimel, Kuf Yud Dalet, and Kuf Kaf Bet.
Exactly. All those places. Go
Asak
ahead.
Sorry, Dura, B'Shem I never know how to pronounce his name in an acronym form, but Mahari.
Mahari, I would say.
Yeah, this because Mahari means that's why B'Tshuvot. All right, V'Aruch Da'anu Noagim Latir Recha Milta B'Diavad Aval Lechachila Yesh Le'Asor Ve'Ein Chiluk Bein Tanarim Shelanu L'Shelahem De'Le'olam Lech
So that's the
De'Lechachila.
line. That's the line I read to you a little bit earlier.
Yeah.
Da'anu nohagin lahati recha milta b'di'evet. In other words, any time that it's b'di'evet, which includes buying bread that's already made, we're matir recha milta. We can't put the bread in the oven, but if it's been put in the oven, then once that's called b'di'evet, and I can buy it now.
Mm-hmm. So, but Aval Lechachila Yesh Le'Asor, right? But you
Right.
should.
So our minhag is latchila not to rely on that. Okay, go ahead. Ve'ein.
Ve'en Chiluk Ben Tanarim Shelanu L'Shelahem. He rejects Rabbeinu Tam's distinction, or at least he's not willing to follow it, right? Between
No. I think he sort of agrees that there's a difference physically, maybe, but he's saying it comes out that there's not going to be any difference because
yes.
if the minhag is to be machmir lechatchila, then why would you? Then don't look for kulas.
Mm-hmm. So
Go ahead.
yeah, because at the end of the day, halachically, there's no distinction. Omnam, b'divrei Beit Yosef mashma de'af lecharchila ein lesor ela b'tanur tsar. So for us, we don't make a halachic distinction between the type of oven. We just say lecharchila sor b'diavad is permissible. But the Beit Yosef actually thinks that if it's of a non-narrow oven, then even lecharchila you could do it.
Right. So it comes out that actually you can't put in your oven. Let's jump right to Lamaisa. You can't put in your oven milchiks and fleishiks at the same time. He says that's the minhag. You can't like go and plan that and plan to do that. Now b'di'evid, it may be what's called b'di'evid. It could be that it's you just realize you just realize it's Shabbat to be Shabbat and you have no time and you have to cook them both right now. Well, then we have that solution of who was it? I don't remember, but the Hasidim or the what is it?
Hagahos Mamanios.
Yeah, it was Hagot Mamanios, wasn't it? Is that right? Is that the covering?
No, but he quoted it in the name of
Nikiye Das.
Yeah.
Of a certain city. But yeah.
Oh.
Anyway, go ahead. Let's see, how is our time? We have a few more minutes.
You're not gonna tell your story, Rav Nachum?
Oh, my story. Yeah, you want my story? So we'll stop. Maybe we'll stop here. My story is that once it was before Shabbat, and I didn't have time to cook everything, and so I had to put in. What was my story exactly? It was chicken. I think
chicken lasagna, right? Is that right?
Yeah, it was lasagna. It was chicken and lasagna, and so I covered the lasagna with aluminum foil, and I put them in the oven together. I don't think I covered the chicken, but I covered the lasagna. You could probably put there is a hashash that the pot itself will become fleshik. So ideally, and this is a minhag of American minhag, is you cover it twice with aluminum foil, because then the outer aluminum foil maybe will get from fleshik from the chicken, but aluminum against aluminum doesn't transfer flavor. Two dry pots don't transfer flavor. If you wouldn't have the outer covering, then the bottom of the lasagna tray would become maybe fleshik. There's a whole nother question, which is Zeah, which we're not talking about. Which Zeah is much more problematic. Rav Moshe talks about Zeah, which is actual steam from the chicken coming onto it. He says that everybody agrees that Zeah is actually a halachic problem. But Rav Moshe says he says a very important klal. He says you don't have to imagine that there's Zeah. It's only if you see Zeah that there is Zeah. You can't say, well, there must have been Zeah because the chicken had a lot of juice in it. You have to actually see drops or some kind of Zeah being collected on something. But because of the chashash of it, we still should cover it really twice, actually. I guess we'll stop here. There's a couple other interesting that Rev Darkei Moshe goes on a little bit more.
Harifut, right? Harif situation, right?
Talks about Harifut. Yeah, I would have gone another. I would say we did half of what I wanted to do in the Darkei Moshe, but we'll stop here. I think next time we might just go on to the next Siman next time. If Yossi, are you ready for the next Siman?
Corey, do you want to do it next week? Or you want to? Yeah, we can do it next week.
Okay.
We have some sources.
All right. So next week, you guys will do, and Joel, it's up to you to finish the Shulchan Aruch in the Rechazak.
Yeah, we'll do the Mechaber and the Ramah for next time.
Yeah, I think there's not so much to do. There's a few interesting. There's not too much interesting shachs and tazas, but there's a couple.
Yeah.
You'll find whatever it is. So I'll leave that to there. I think we got a really good handle on Reicha, and I really like my motto for today is we hold Reicha is Milta L'chatchila, but b'diavad we don't hold it. Okay. Laila Tov, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.